reporters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefanía Bravo, and this is From the South. Justice in Argentina has won a historic battle this week. For the first time, a court has recognized forced abortion as a separate crime against humanity. The trial dealt with the case of Silvia Supo, who was kidnapped by the military dictatorship in 1977 and held in a secret prison. There she was raped, got pregnant, and then was forced to abort. Silvia spent 33 years seeking justice, but after giving testimony in an earlier trial in 2010, she was murdered. Let's listen to some of her testimony in that earlier trial.
They forced me to get undressed and they took me to a room. They tied my arms and legs and covered my head with a hood. 3 persons entered the room and they raped me. I couldn't shout or move. After that, they untied me and said to get dressed. Then I went to the toilet. That was when I walked through this long hallway and tripped over with bodies on the floor. After that, they took me to the police station again.
And joining us live from Rosario in Argentina is Susana Chiarotti. She is a lawyer specialized in human rights and gender issues, and she's also a member of the Committee of Experts on Violence set up by the Organization of American States. Hi, Susana. Thank you for joining us. Why is it so important to classify forced abortions as a separate crime against humanity?
We need to overcome the era of silence that lasted till the Second World War. We need to visibilize all sexual violence, all cases of sexual violence against women, so we bring justice. And we need to prove that this kind of crime should be out of the bag of torture, because after a long time, during a long time, they have been including, they knew that these cases were happening, they were considering collateral damage, and they included it into the bag of torture. And torture and sexual violence are different crimes. They protect different rights, so they should be judged separately. And besides, to include in the bag of torture and not mentioning it expressly as a crime against humanity means also, like, in some way, it cleans, it washes the image of the perpetrator. So we need to show what really they have been doing in the clandestine detention centers. And besides, if it is a crime against humanity, a separate crime, it will be imprescriptible. And so after 30 years, they also could be judged. You know, there are a lot of consequences of that.
Susana, how will this ruling impact future cases regarding victims of crimes against humanity?
I think that the other victims that have suffered the same crimes will be more encouraged to denounce it, and the prosecutor will be more encouraged to accuse, and then judges will be ready to judge it and to punish it, really. I think that it will set a precedent in Argentina, because all these crimes that you are not judging today will be replicated in society tomorrow. It is important to visualize them, to show that women are important, so we don't multiply. Impunity multiplies violence against women. So we are avoiding impunity with that judgment. And first of all, it strengthens the jurisprudence in Argentina. It's very important for us to go through this way.
Susana, can you explain to our viewers what this triple violence against women means?
I think that what happened with this victim in this case, Silvia Supo, was that she was 17 when she was in prison. Then she was raped in the clandestine center by several soldiers and officers. And then she got pregnant because of that. And after that, she was sent to a clinic to perform an abortion. The defenders say that with the abortion, they were benefiting Sylvia because if not, she would have a child that was a product of a rape. And in our view, it is the third invasion that her body suffered. The first one was when she was raped. She was her sexual freedom was invaded. The second one was with the forced pregnancy. It's the second invasion to her body. And the third one is when she was taken to a clinic to amend the error, as they said. Her body was invaded by the third time. So they were three separate invasions, and we need to visualize each one of them. Because if not, doesn't matter what we do to a woman, nobody cares, and this is replicated in our daily life in normal times. So we need to visualize it. We need to show what was the reality of what was happening. And besides, after finishing the era of silence, the International Criminal Court of The Hague says that in the Rome Statute that all these are crimes against humanity and will be judged, investigated, and punished separately. So we need to go through this way.
Susana, really quickly, what does this legal precedent mean for Argentina?
It is very important. First of all, Argentina is the first country that is investigating, judging, and punishing their own perpetrators, because in the all other tribunal they were the winners who were judging people who were defeated, or there were truth committees or reconciliation committees that had not the same impact as the judgment in Argentina. So for us, it's very important because we have begun a jurisprudence that we have now 17 sentences judging this violence, sexual violence against women and men. And this case is the first case in which forced abortion is punished. So it's visualized, it's investigated, and it's punished. So it's the first precedent. It's very important, and I think will settle also an international precedent.
Susana, thank you so much for your time for Telesur. We have been speaking with Susana Chiarotti. She's a lawyer speaking to us from Rosario, Argentina. More stories now. One day after UN scientists warned of climate chaos if the world doesn't start cutting emissions, Hurricane Michael has pummeled Cuba and Central America. On Tuesday, Michael brought heavy rains and winds of up to 120 kilometers per hour to western Cuba and eastern Mexico. The National Hurricane Center in Miami has warned people in the Florida Gulf to prepare for damaging winds and flash floods. After Hurricane Michael passed the west coast of Cuba, authorities are now taking special measures to protect the people. Our correspondent in Havana, Alien Fernandez, has more.
Cuba has returned to normality after Hurricane Michael. The storm affected the west coast of the country, especially the region of Pinar del Rio. According to official reports, the area was flooded, affecting communities. 300 families were evacuated and several rescue operations were carried out. Government officials took special measures to protect tobacco crops from heavy rains. Tobacco is one of the country's main resources that it exports. The meteorological center is still warning about heavy rains and high storms that could affect local fishing communities and coastal transportation. Last night, President Miguel Díaz-Canel held an emergency meeting with local government authorities from the affected areas to agree on new economic measures to help.
Michael is now a Category 3 hurricane heading to Florida. With winds of over 100 miles per hour, Michael is moving over the Gulf of Mexico. Authorities told people from at least 20 counties in the state to flee the coastal areas. It is expected that Hurricane Michael makes landfall on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the governor of Florida, Rick Scott, has warned that Hurricane Michael could be one of the most destructive storms to hit Florida in years.
Think about the destruction we've seen before with storms like Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Michael poses a deadly threat, and as it grows stronger, we can expect it to make landfall as a major Category 3 storm on Wednesday along the Gulf Coast. The Panhandle and parts of the Big Bend will likely see winds in excess of 110 miles per hour.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, is to leave the Trump administration by the end of the year. In a White House address to the press, President Donald Trump confirmed that he had accepted her resignation. The former governor of South Carolina is the latest to quit Trump's national security circle. She has held the post since January 2017.
What our role is in the world.
But I just want to let you know, so at the end of the year, Nikki will be leaving and will be in constant touch. I know that whenever you have any ideas, you can call me because you know all the players.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you,
it's been an honor of a lifetime. And I will say this, for all of you that are going to ask about 2020, no, I'm not running for 2020. I can promise you what I'll be doing is campaigning for this one.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud, amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez says he's concerned over the policies of Brazil's far-right presidential candidate Jair Bolsonaro. Sanchez's comments came after meeting with Chilean President Sebastián Piñera. On his part, Piñera says he agrees with Bolsonaro's economic program, but rejects his racist and misogynist remarks.
Whatever the result of the election in Brazil, we hope that the government of Brazil will adhere to their international agreements and go beyond just the act of signing agreements, and to perpetuate an intergenerational commitment, which I think is fundamental. It is an enormous concern to announce that a country like Brazil could leave the Paris Agreement, when the day before yesterday the UN panel of scientists alerted us of the immediate consequences of global warming, and that we need to take urgent and drastic measures.
And the Workers' Party presidential candidate in Brazil, Fernando Haddad, says he's reaching out to different political parties. It's a central part of his strategy for the runoff election on October 28th. Haddad has been meeting with party leaders in Sao Paulo to discuss the next steps for his campaign. On Sunday, he came 17 points behind Bolsonaro in the first round.
This reshaping of the field is very important for us, so we've been in contact with Ciro Gomes and his team. With the leadership of the PSB, the Socialist Party, with PSOL too, which has already given us their support. To form this coalition for freedom, for democracy, and for social rights, we haven't contacted the PSDB yet.
And Venezuela's Interior Minister has ordered an investigation into the death of an opposition councillor. Fernando Albán was arrested last week in connection to the assassination attempt against President Nicolás Maduro. According to initial reports, Albán was heading to a first hearing when he asked for permission to go to the bathroom. Authorities say he threw himself from a window. Reverol has charged the prosecutor and the investigative police with carrying out a thorough investigation. and a wake was held for Fernando Alban. The body was taken to the head office of the National Assembly, where politicians and other council members paid their respects. Mexico has officially launched a national search system for missing people due to violence. This comes after people complained about the delay of its implementation announced over a year ago. The system will allow to create special search units in the country's 32 states. It is estimated that around 37,000 people are disappeared in Mexico.
The first thing that has to be done is to have a record of how many people are actually registered as missing in the country.
The government is not fulfilling its obligation of handling and preventing those thousands of cases of missing people that have taken place and are taking place in Mexico.
Another 94 Venezuelan migrants in Peru have signed up for their return to the homeland plan. The returning group includes 5 pregnant women, 17 people with medical issues, and 28 minors. Under this government plan, 564 citizens have returned to Venezuela from Peru. Peru's President Martín Vizcarra has called on citizens to reject a constitutional change to reestablish a bicameral Congress. Vizcarra says Congress has distorted the original proposal. The reform is among the 4 measures proposed for the constitutional referendum to be held on December 9th.
On the 4th reform, on the restitution of the bicamerality of Parliament, we say no, as it has been proposed by Congress. It has distorted the project that we've proposed. We're very respectful of the separation of powers. We're very respectful of institutionalism. So that's why the 4 constitutional reform projects that we have received today will be submitted to a referendum so that the public can weigh in.
Vizcarra had threatened to close down Congress if it failed to agree to send his 4 anti-corruption reforms to a referendum. The changes include regulating the financing of political organizations, a ban on the immediate re-election of members of parliament, and the return of a bicameral Congress. Steep price hikes in Argentina have worsened inflation rates, hurting people's economy.
Recent price hikes have included tickets for public transport, as well as the price of fuel and basic services, which are impacting families across Argentina. The rise in poverty rates is also leaving many Argentinians without purchasing power. For the poorest families in the country, making ends meet is a challenge.
It's clear that the dollar is going to continue to rise. Inflation is going to get worse with these price hikes.
Experts have condemned the price hikes, saying they are creating a very dramatic situation for those most vulnerable. Unemployment rates are also rising. It is estimated that inflation will reach 45% in 2018.
We have large production of energy locally, and what we are doing is charging for energy in dollars with international prices. This is not benefiting producers or small and medium-sized companies.
Opposition members in Congress have united against the national budget and price hikes. They are preparing a special session to reject the decree with which the government will force gas users to pay for a $250 million deficit in gas companies by adding a surcharge to their monthly bill.
This is an unconstitutional budget. It is influenced by the International Monetary Fund. The IMF came thanks to the government, and if the budgetary goals are not fulfilled, inflation is estimated to rise by 23% for next year, so it's likely these price hikes are permanent.
The surcharge gas users must pay is added to the 35% increase of rates last week and the adjustment in social subsidies.
At least 15 people have died and 300 others injured in Haiti after an earthquake struck on Saturday. According to the head of the Civil Protection Agency, the 5.9 magnitude earthquake destroyed around 40 houses. Widespread panic has engulfed the northern part of the country. A 7.0 magnitude earthquake wrecked the capital, Port-au-Prince, in 2010. Today marks the 51st anniversary of the assassination of revolutionary leader Ernesto Che Guevara. Che was executed by members of the army in Bolivia and the United States Central Intelligence Agency. Various Latin American leaders have commemorated his life via social media. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro tweeted, 51 years ago, the CIA assassinated Ernesto Che Guevara. The people of Latin America and the world commemorate him for helping millions fight against imperialism. Bolivian President Evo Morales also commemorated Che's legacy via Twitter, saying, "A day like today in 1967, the world lost a tireless fighter, revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara, pioneer of the idea of liberation of our people in Latin America and against imperialism." But Che also had a great impact in Africa. Even though Che Guevara's expedition in Congo was not a success, it paved the way for great Cuban victories on the African continent. One of these was the Battle of Quito Quanaveye in Angola, which was one of the catalysts that eventually led to the independence of South Africa in 1994.
Le puso cerco a la muerte. Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Safe zones were created in refugee camps in Greece to safeguard teenagers between the ages of 16 and 18. But limited space within the camps makes looking after all minors impossible.
According to a United Nations Children's Agency official, the situation concerning minors is very worrying.
The vast majority of the children are deeply traumatized. Many have lived through war and they've had to flee their homes. They have survived, but now find themselves living in horrible conditions with no end in sight. For many children, they simply cannot cope.
It's even worse for children who arrived in Europe without an adult relative. Authorities estimate there are around 3,000 to 5,000 unaccompanied minors. But the lack of accommodation forces teenagers to sleep on the streets or be detained in police stations despite the fact that they have committed no crimes.
Before I was in the Athens with my friends and I don't have a papers and police catch me, then go to jail, and after I come in here. Because I am minor, I don't have a papers and family. And here I have one organization, ARCIS, for minors.
ARCIS has created safe zones in various refugee camps. Eleni Pisas is the person responsible in Tebas.
The initial goal of safe zones was to accommodate minors for a brief time only. Unfortunately, at the moment there is not enough space for these children, so the safe zones have become permanent.
Pisas says that even though the safe zones are working well, what the refugee children really need are structural changes in the asylum system.
The first thing to do is enroll them in school. Their main problem is dealing with asylum requests. Most of the children have to wait 2 years for the asylum service interview to sort out their request.
To look after children is a basic fundamental right, despite their origin, nationality, or legal status.
A suicide attack at a political rally in eastern Afghanistan has killed at least 13 people, including a young candidate. More than 40 people have also been injured in the blast. According to officials, a militant blew himself up among supporters of candidate Abdul Nasir Momand. It was the second suicide blast targeting a parliamentary candidate during the campaign for the October 20th election.
Several of the wounded are in a serious condition, but they are being transferred to the main hospital for better treatment. At the moment, the treatment of the other victims is ongoing too.
A stolen ancient Persian artifact has returned to Iran. The 25 centuries old piece is in Tehran's National Museum after a court in the U.S. ordered its return. The bas-relief depicts the head of a soldier from a line of immortal guards. The twice stolen artifact was discovered in the early 1930s at Persepolis, today's central Iranian city of Shiraz. Archaeologists in Jerusalem have discovered a 2,000-year-old Hebrew inscription. Archaeologists of Israel's Antiquities Authority made the discovery on a stone pillar. The text reads Jerusalem in the way the name is pronounced and written today. The piece dates back to the period of the Second Jewish Temple, which lasted between 530 BC and 70 DC. October 9th marks the 78th anniversary of the birth of British singer John Lennon. The former member of the Beatles is still a symbol of peace. He actively opposed the war in Vietnam. Lennon's song Imagine remains as an emblematic anthem against war and violence. He died in 1980 after being shot in front of his apartment in Manhattan.
You may say I'm a dreamer.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on culture, innovation, conservation, human well-being.